The school bell rang loud and clear just like it did every day at 3:30. Kids rushed out of Riverside Elementary School, their backpacks bouncing as they ran toward waiting cars and yellow buses. Some were already planning sleepovers and video game sessions. Others talked about soccer practice and piano lessons, but 8-year-old Lily walked slowly. Her small backpack hung loose on her shoulders, and her worn sneakers made soft sounds on the concrete. While other kids chatted about after-school snacks and homework help from parents, Lily had a different routine waiting for her. She walked the 6 blocks to Maple Park, the same route she took every single day. This wasn't because she loved the playground or wanted to meet friends there. It was because her mom wouldn't be home from her first job until 5 o'clock, and her second job didn't start until 6. The park was safe, quiet, and free. Lily found her usual bench under the big oak tree. The metal was cold against her legs, but she didn't mind. She'd gotten used to spending these afternoon hours alone. She pulled out her phone, an old one her mom had given her for emergencies, and checked the time. 2 hours and 15 minutes until Mom would be home. From her backpack, she carefully took out her treasure for the day. 1 chocolate chip cookie wrapped in a paper napkin. Her mom always tried to pack her something special, even when money was tight. Sometimes it was an apple, sometimes crackers with peanut butter. Today it was this cookie from the discount grocery store. Lily unwrapped it slowly like it was made of gold. She could see the chocolate chips scattered throughout, and it smelled sweet and warm, even though it had been in her backpack all day. Her stomach rumbled softly. She'd eaten the school lunch, but that felt like hours ago. Just as she was about to take her first bite, she heard something that made her stop. It was a sound she'd never heard from a grown-up before. Someone was crying. Not the way kids cried when they scraped their knees, but deep, quiet sobs that seemed to come from somewhere very deep inside. Lily looked around and saw a man sitting on the bench just 20 feet away. At first glance, he looked like he had everything together. His dark suit looked expensive even though it was wrinkled. His shoes were the kind her mom called fancy leather. A briefcase sat beside him, the type that important business people carried in movies. But something was very wrong with this picture. The man's head was buried in his hands and his whole body shook with sadness. His shoulders moved up and down with each sob, and Lily could see tears dripping between his fingers onto his expensive pants. The man was Robert Williams, though Lily had no way of knowing his name or that he was the CEO of a technology company that employed over 5,000 people. She couldn't know that just 3 hours earlier, he'd sat in a conference room and watched his entire life's work disappear. His company was bankrupt. 20 years of building, dreaming, and working 18-hour days had crumbled in a single morning. She also couldn't know that he'd received the divorce papers that very morning, before the business meeting that destroyed everything else. His wife of 15 years had decided she couldn't handle his constant work schedule and emotional distance anymore. The papers were still in his briefcase next to the official bankruptcy documents. All Lily could see was a person who looked sadder than anyone should ever have to feel. She'd been taught not to talk to strangers, but she'd also been taught something else by her mom. When someone's hurting, honey, sometimes a kind word can change their whole day. Her mom said this whenever they passed homeless people on the street or saw someone looking lost in the grocery store. Lily looked down at her cookie, then back at the crying man. Her stomach rumbled again, reminding her that she was hungry, but something inside her chest felt heavier than her hunger. This man looked like he needed help, and she was the only person around who could offer any. She stood up slowly, her cookie still clutched carefully in her small hands. Her heart beat faster as she walked toward the stranger. What if he didn't want to be bothered? What if he was dangerous? But looking at him, crumpled and broken on that bench, he didn't seem dangerous at all. He seemed lost. "Excuse me, mister," Lily said softly when she was close enough. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. The man looked up, startled. His eyes were red and puffy and his face was wet with tears. He looked confused, as if he'd forgotten that other people existed in the world. For a moment he just stared at this small girl with pigtails and a concerned expression. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, even though it was obvious he wasn't. Robert wiped his face quickly with his sleeve, trying to pull himself together. "I'm fine, sweetheart," he said, though his voice cracked on the words. "You should probably get back to your parents." "It's just me and my mom," Lily said simply, "and she's at work until 5 o'clock. She looked at this broken man and felt something twist in her chest. "You don't look fine," You look really, really sad." Something about her honesty, delivered without judgment or fear, made Robert's careful composure crumble again. Fresh tears started flowing, and he didn't bother to hide them this time. "You know what?" Lily said, stepping closer. "My mom always says that cookies make everything a little bit better. Maybe not all the way better, but at least a little bit." She held out her precious cookie. "Would you like mine? I think you need it more than I do." Robert stared at the cookie like he'd never seen one before. It was obviously homemade or from a cheap store, wrapped in a simple napkin. The chocolate chips were uneven, and it was slightly cracked around the edges. But in that moment it looked like the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Oh no, honey," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's your snack. You keep it. I'm not that hungry anyway," Lily lied with a bright smile. "And besides, when people are sad, sometimes food helps. That's what my mom tells me when I have bad days." She placed the cookie gently in his larger hands, and Robert felt something break open inside his chest. When was the last time someone had shown him kindness without wanting something in return? When was the last time someone had simply cared about his feelings without calculating what they could gain from his pain? As he looked down at this small gift from an even smaller person, Robert realized something. For the first time in hours, he wasn't thinking about bankruptcy or divorce papers or failed dreams. He was thinking about the extraordinary kindness of a little girl who had just given away her only cookie to make a stranger feel better. Robert held the cookie in his hands like it was something precious and fragile. The simple napkin felt soft against his fingers, and he could smell the sweet scent of vanilla and chocolate chips. When was the last time someone had given him something without expecting anything back? He couldn't remember. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice still shaky from crying. "But are you sure? This is your snack." Lily nodded firmly, her pigtails bouncing. "My mom says sharing is one of the most important things we can do. She shares her dinner with me even when there's not very much, so I can share my cookie with you." Something about the way she said it, so matter-of-fact and kind, made Robert's throat tight with emotion. This little girl, who clearly didn't have much herself, was giving away her only treat to help a complete stranger feel better. "Would you like to sit with me?" Lily asked, patting the bench beside her. "Sometimes when I'm sad, sitting alone makes it worse." Robert looked around the park. A few other people walked their dogs or pushed strollers, but no one was paying attention to them. For the first time all day, he felt like he could breathe without someone watching his every move, waiting to see how the great Robert Williams would handle his spectacular failure. "Okay," he said, moving to sit beside her on the bench. "Just for a few minutes." Lily smiled and settled back against the bench. Her legs didn't quite reach the ground, so they swung gently back and forth. "What's your name, mister?" "Robert," he said, then realized he hadn't asked hers. "What's yours?" "I'm Lily," she said cheerfully. "I come here every day after school. My mom works really hard, so I wait for her here. It's not so bad, though. I like watching the squirrels, and sometimes there are really pretty clouds." Robert looked up at the sky. He hadn't noticed clouds in years. Today they were white and puffy, drifting slowly across the blue afternoon sky. When had he stopped noticing things like clouds? "Do you work really hard too?" Lily asked, looking at his expensive suit. Robert almost laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "I used to. I worked so hard that I forgot about everything else. I forgot about clouds and cookies and—" He paused, looking at this wise little girl. "And being kind to people." "What kind of work do you do?" "I used to run a company," Robert said. "A big one, with lots of people working there. But today—" He trailed off. "How do you explain bankruptcy and failure to an 8-year-old? "Today something bad happened?" Lily guessed. "Yeah, something really bad. I lost my job, and all the people who worked for me lost their jobs too. And my wife," he stopped again. Even thinking about the divorce papers made his chest hurt. Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking. "My dad left when I was little," she said finally. "Mom says sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and hurt each other, even when they don't mean to." Robert looked at her with surprise. This little girl had already experienced loss and disappointment, yet here she was offering comfort to a stranger. "I'm sorry about your dad," he said softly. "It's okay. Mom and I take care of each other now. She says families come in all different sizes." Lily swung her legs thoughtfully. "Maybe you can find a new job. Mom had to find new jobs lots of times before she found the ones she has now." It's not that simple, Robert started to say, then stopped himself. Why was he trying to explain adult complications to a child? Instead, he took a small bite of the cookie. The taste hit him like a wave of memory. It was sweet and simple, with just the right amount of chocolate chips. It tasted like the cookies his grandmother used to make when he was Lily's age, before he learned that success meant working through weekends and missing family dinners. "It's good, isn't it?" Lily said, watching his face light up slightly. "It's perfect," Robert said, and he meant it. Not because it was the best cookie he'd ever tasted, but because it came with kindness attached. They sat together quietly for a while. Lily pointed out a squirrel that was burying something near the oak tree, and Robert found himself actually watching it instead of checking his phone. When was the last time he'd sat still without thinking about emails or meetings or profit margins? "Do you have kids?" Lily asked. Robert's face clouded over again. "No, my wife wanted them, but I was always too busy. I kept saying next year or when the company's more stable. Now it's too late." "It's not too late," Lily said with the confidence only children possess. "My teacher, Miss Rodriguez, didn't have kids until she was really old, like 40 or something, and she just had a baby last month." Despite everything, Robert smiled. 40 seemed ancient to this little girl, but he was 42. Maybe there was still time for the things that really mattered. "You're very wise for 8 years old," he told her. "Mom says I'm an old soul," Lily said proudly. "I don't know what that means, but I think it's good." Robert's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, he pulled it out and saw 17 missed calls from his business partner, his lawyer, and several reporters who had somehow gotten his personal number. "Is that important?" Lily asked, noticing how his face changed when he looked at the screen. "I thought it was," Robert said, surprising himself by putting the phone back in his pocket without answering. "But maybe it's not as important as sitting here with you." Lily beamed at that. "I like talking to you too, Robert. You're sad, but you're nice." For the next hour, they talked about all sorts of things. Lily told him about her favorite subject in school, reading, her biggest dream, becoming a teacher, like Miss Rodriguez, and her favorite color, purple, but only the really bright kind. Robert found himself sharing things he hadn't talked about in years. He told her about the treehouse he'd built as a kid, the dog he'd loved who died when he was 10, and how he'd wanted to be a teacher too, before he got caught up in the business world. "You could still be a teacher," Lily said thoughtfully. "Mom says it's never too late to change your mind about what you want to be when you grow up." As the afternoon wore on, Robert felt something strange happening inside his chest. The heavy weight of despair was still there, but it felt lighter somehow. This little girl's simple kindness and honest conversation had reminded him of something he'd forgotten. There was more to life than profit and loss statements. When his phone rang for the 20th time, Robert knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. Real-world problems were waiting for him, and eventually he'd have to face them. "I have to go," he said reluctantly. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lily asked hopefully. Robert looked at her earnest face and felt his heart break a little. Tomorrow. He'd probably be in lawyers' offices or meetings with creditors. His life was about to become a complicated mess of legal proceedings and financial ruins. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But Lily, I want you to know something. You gave me the most important gift anyone has ever given me." "A cookie?" she asked, confused. "Hope," Robert said simply. "You gave me hope." Robert took the last bite of the cookie, and as the sweetness melted on his tongue, he felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just the sugar or the comfort of food. It was something deeper. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt truly present in a moment instead of constantly thinking about the next meeting, the next deadline, the next crisis to solve. "Thank you," he said again, crumpling the napkin gently in his hands. "That was the best cookie I've ever had." Lily giggled. "It was just from the grocery store. Mom says the fancy bakery ones are way better, but we can't really afford those very often." The casual way she mentioned money being tight, hit Robert harder than any business failure could. This little girl understood struggle in a way that was real and immediate, yet she'd given away her only treat without a second thought. When was the last time he'd made a decision based on kindness instead of profit? "Lily," he said carefully, "what school do you go to?" "Riverside Elementary," she said, pointing in the direction she'd walked from. "It's the one with the big red brick front and the playground with the really tall slide. Do you know it?" Robert nodded, filing the information away in his memory. "It sounds like a nice school." "It is. My teacher, Mrs. Patterson, is really nice, even when kids don't do their homework. And we have art class twice a week." Lily's face lit up. "I love art class. We get to paint and draw whatever we want." "What do you like to paint?" Robert asked, genuinely curious. When had he last asked someone about their dreams without thinking, about how it could benefit him? Mostly flowers and trees and things like that. "Last week I painted a picture of me and my mom having a picnic. Mrs. Patterson said it was really good and put it on the special wall where only the best artwork goes." Robert could picture it perfectly. A child's drawing full of bright colors and simple joy. "I bet it was beautiful." "Mom cried when she saw it," Lily said matter-of-factly. "But the good kind of crying, not the sad kind. She hung it on our refrigerator next to my spelling test where I got all the words right." The image of a proud mother hanging her daughter's artwork on a refrigerator made Robert's chest tight. How many simple moments like that had he missed with his own wife because he was always working? How many conversations had he rushed through because there was always something more important demanding his attention? His phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. The screen showed his business partner's name, and Robert knew that ignoring these calls was only making his problems worse. But looking at Lily, swinging her legs contentedly on the bench, he realized that sitting here hadn't made anything worse at all. If anything, it had given him something he desperately needed: perspective. "I really do have to go," he said reluctantly, standing up slowly. His legs felt stiff from sitting still for so long, but his heart felt lighter than it had in months. "Will I see you again?" Lily asked, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. Robert looked down at this remarkable little girl who had changed his entire day with one simple act of kindness. He wanted to promise her that he'd come back tomorrow, that they could sit on this bench and talk about clouds and dreams and all the things that really mattered. But his life was about to become a whirlwind of legal meetings and financial disasters. "I hope so," he said honestly. "But my life is pretty complicated right now." "That's okay," Lily said with the easy acceptance of childhood. "Mom's life is complicated too, but she says complicated doesn't mean impossible." Those words hit Robert like a lightning bolt. Complicated doesn't mean impossible. How had he forgotten that? When had he started believing that difficult meant hopeless? "Your mom sounds very wise," he said. "She is. She knows lots of things, like how to make cookies taste good even when we don't have all the fancy ingredients, and how to fix the heater when it makes that weird noise, and how to make me laugh when I'm scared about something." Robert felt a stab of regret thinking about his own wife. When had he stopped trying to make her laugh? When had he stopped noticing when she needed comfort or encouragement? "Lily, I want you to remember something," Robert said, kneeling down so they were at eye level. "What you did today, giving me that cookie when I was sad, that was one of the most important things anyone has ever done for me." "Really?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Really. You reminded me about something I had forgotten." "What did you forget?" Robert thought for a moment. "How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you'd forgotten how to be human?" "I forgot that the most important things in life aren't about work or money. They're about being kind to people and caring about each other." Lily nodded seriously, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. "Mom says that all the time. She says money is important because we need it to live, but kindness is what makes living worth it." "Your mom is absolutely right," Robert said, feeling tears prick at his eyes again. But these were different tears than the ones he'd shed earlier. These weren't tears of despair, but of gratitude. His phone rang again, and this time Robert knew he couldn't put it off any longer. The real world was calling literally, and he had to face whatever came next. I really have to go now, he said, standing up and picking up his briefcase. Okay, Lily said, then surprised him by hopping off the bench and giving him a quick G around his waist. I hope you feel better, Robert, and I hope all your complicated stuff works out. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but it was the first genuine human affection Robert had felt in months. He hugged her back gently, this small person who had given him such a big gift. Thank you, Lily, for everything. As he walked away, Robert turned back once to see Lily settling back onto the bench, pulling out a book from her backpack. She looked so small sitting there alone, but she also looked completely at peace with herself and the world around her. With each step away from the park, Robert felt the weight of his problems settling back onto his shoulders. The bankruptcy was still real. The divorce papers were still in his briefcase. Hundreds of employees were still going to lose their jobs because of his failures. But something fundamental had changed inside him. The despair that had consumed him that morning was still there, but it was no longer the only thing he felt. There was also hope, planted by a little girl's simple kindness. As he walked toward his car, Robert made a decision. Whatever happened next, however complicated his life became, he was going to remember this afternoon. He was going to remember that success wasn't just about profit margins and market share. It was about the kind of person you were when no one was watching. It was about whether you chose kindness or selfishness when faced with someone else's pain. He was going to remember Lily, and he was going to find a way to deserve the gift she had given him. Somehow, someway, he was going to make sure that her faith in human goodness wasn't misplaced. The cookie was gone, but its taste lingered. And with it, the memory of a little girl who had taught him that sometimes the smallest gestures could save a person's soul. 3 months had passed since that afternoon in the park, and Lily had almost forgotten about the sad man in the expensive suit. Almost, but not quite. Sometimes when she sat on her bench after school, she wondered if Robert was feeling better. She hoped he was. Life had settled into its usual rhythm. School, homework, afternoons in the park, and evenings with her mom. They were still saving every penny they could for Lily's future education. Her mom had even picked up some weekend cleaning jobs to add a little extra to their college fund jar that sat on the kitchen counter. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Lily was in math class working on multiplication problems when Mrs. Patterson got a phone call. After hanging up, she walked over to Lily's desk with a strange expression on her face. "Lily, honey, you need to go to the principal's office," Mrs. Patterson said gently. Lily's stomach dropped. She'd never been called to the principal's office before. She was a good student who always followed the rules. What could she have done wrong? "Am I in trouble?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "No, sweetheart. Someone wants to see you. Take your backpack with you." The walk down the hallway felt like it took forever. Lily's mind raced through every possible reason she might be in trouble. Had she forgotten to turn in an assignment? Had someone complained about something she'd said? Her hands were sweaty as she knocked on Principal Martinez's door. "Come in, Lily," came the warm voice from inside. Lily pushed open the door and froze. There, sitting in one of the chairs across from Principal Martinez's desk, was her mom. But something was wrong. Her mom was supposed to be at work and she was crying. Not sad crying, but the kind of crying people do when something amazing happens. And next to her mom sat a man in a clean, pressed suit. It took Lily a moment to recognize him because he looked so different from that day in the park. His hair was neat, his face was clean-shaven, and his eyes were bright and alert. "But it was definitely Robert." "Lily," her mom said, jumping up and wrapping her in the biggest hug she'd ever given. "Oh, honey, you're not going to believe what's happened." "Am I in trouble?" Lily asked again, looking between her mom, the principal, and Robert. "Quite the opposite," Principal Martinez said with a huge smile. "You're here because someone wants to tell you something very important." Robert stood up slowly, and Lily could see that his eyes were watery too. "Hello, Lily. Do you remember me?" "You're Robert," she said simply. "From the park. You were really sad that day." "That's right. I was having the worst day of my life," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "But then a little girl gave me her cookie and reminded me what kindness looks like." Lily's mom looked confused. "What cookie?" "Lily, what is he talking about?" "It was just my after-school snack," Lily said, suddenly feeling shy. "He looked really sad, so I shared it with him. Mom always says sharing is important." Her mom's eyes filled with fresh tears. and she looked at Robert with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "Mrs. Chen," Robert said to Lily's mom, "your daughter saved my life that day." "I don't understand," Lily's mom said. "She just shared a cookie." Robert sat back down, leaning forward so he could look Lily in the eyes. "That day in the park, I had lost everything. My business was ruined, my marriage was over, and I felt like there was no point in trying anymore. I was sitting on that bench thinking about giving up on everything." Lily's eyes grew wide. She hadn't realized how serious his sadness had been. "But then you walked over and gave me your cookie," Robert continued. "Not because you wanted anything from me. Not because you knew who I was or what I could do for you. You did it simply because you saw someone who was hurting and you wanted to help." "That's what people should do," Lily said quietly. "Yes, it is. But I had forgotten that. I had been so focused on making money and being successful that I'd forgotten how to be a good person. You reminded me." Principal Martinez dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Even she was getting emotional hearing this story. "After I left the park that day," Robert continued, "I went home and really thought about my life. I realized that losing my business wasn't the end of the world. It was a chance to start over and do things differently. So I did." "You got a new job?" Lily asked. Robert smiled. "I started a new company, but this time, I built it on the idea that businesses should help people, not just make money. I called it Small Kindness Industries, because I learned that small acts of kindness can change everything." Lily's mom was listening with her mouth slightly open, trying to understand how her daughter's simple gesture had led to all of this. "The company has been very successful," Robert said. "We make technology that helps schools and hospitals work better. And we always remember to treat our employees like family, not just workers." "That's really good," Lily said, genuinely happy that Robert had found his way to a better life. "But I never forgot about you, Lily. I've been looking for you for 3 months. I wanted to find you and thank you properly for what you did." "You already said thank you," Lily said. Confused about why this required such a big meeting, Robert laughed, and it was a warm, genuine sound. "Yes, but saying thank you wasn't enough. Your mom told me about your dream to become a teacher." Lily nodded. She'd been talking about being a teacher since kindergarten. "Well, I've set up something called an education fund in your name. It means that all of your school costs are taken care of, from now until you finish college. Every book, every class, every expense, it's all covered." The room went completely silent. Lily looked at her mom, who had gone very pale and was staring at Robert like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. "What does that mean?" Lily asked. Her mom found her voice, though it came out as a whisper. "It means you can go to college, honey. It means you can become a teacher without us having to worry about how to pay for it." "Really?" Lily's eyes were huge. "Really," Robert said. "And not just college. If you want to get a master's degree to be an even better teacher, that's covered too. Whatever education you want for as long as you want it." Lily's mom burst into fresh tears, but she was smiling through them. We can't accept this. It's too much." "Mrs. Chen," Robert said gently, 3 months ago your daughter gave me hope when I had none left. She shared her only cookie with a stranger because she thought it might make him feel better. That simple act of kindness saved my life and helped me build something meaningful. This isn't charity. This is gratitude." Lily walked over to Robert and looked up at him seriously. "Are you happy now? Not sad anymore?" Robert knelt down to her level. "I'm happier than I've ever been. And it started with a little girl who reminded me that being kind is more important than being successful." "But you are successful," Lily pointed out. "You said your new company is doing really well." "You're right," Robert said. "But now I know that the real success isn't the money. It's knowing that what I do helps people, just like what you did helped me." Lily thought about this for a moment, then smiled. "So we both helped each other?" "That's exactly right," Robert said. "And this is just the beginning. I hope we can be friends for a very long time." As Lily hugged Robert again, she realized that her mom had been right all along. Kindness really did make everything better. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it made everything better for everyone involved. 5 years had passed since that life-changing day in the principal's office, and Lily was now 13 years old. She sat in the same park where it all began, but this time she wasn't alone. 3 younger kids from her neighborhood sat around her on the grass listening as she read them a story from one of her favorite books. And then the dragon realized that the princess didn't need rescuing at all, Lily read in her clear, confident voice. She just needed someone to listen to her ideas about how to save the kingdom. The kids giggled and clapped as she closed the book. Lily had been volunteering as a reading tutor for 2 years now, and she loved watching younger children discover the magic of stories. "Miss Lily," said 6-year-old Tommy, "will you read us another one?" "Next week," Lily promised. "But remember what we talked about. You have to practice reading the easy books at home first." As the children ran off to play on the swings, Lily packed her books into her backpack. It was the same backpack she'd carried that day 5 years ago, though she'd decorated it with patches from all the places Robert had taken her and her mom to visit colleges. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mom. "How did tutoring go today? Don't forget Robert is picking you up at 4 for the scholarship ceremony." Lily smiled as she typed back, "Great. Tommy is finally reading full sentences. See you tonight." She still had 30 minutes before Robert arrived, so she walked over to her old bench under the oak tree, the same bench where she'd shared her cookie with a broken stranger. Now that stranger was one of the most important people in her life. "I thought I might find you here," came a familiar voice behind her. Lily turned to see Robert walking toward her, carrying a small paper bag. He looked even more different now than he had 5 years ago. The stress lines around his eyes had been replaced by laugh lines, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who had found his true purpose in life. "You're early," Lily said, scooting over to make room for him on the bench. "I finished my meeting sooner than expected," Robert said, sitting down beside her. "Besides, I wanted to talk to you before the ceremony tonight." The ceremony he was referring to was the annual Small Kindness Industries Scholarship Awards. Robert's company had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and they now gave full college scholarships to 50 students every year. All the recipients had one thing in common. They had shown extraordinary kindness to others despite facing challenges in their own lives. "Nervous about your speech?" Robert asked. Lily shrugged. "A little. It's weird being the first scholarship recipient who gets to speak at the ceremony." "You'll be perfect," Robert said confidently. "You always are when you're talking about things that matter to you." From the paper bag, Robert pulled out 2 chocolate chip cookies wrapped in napkins. They were from the same grocery store bakery where Lily's mom used to buy her after-school treats. "I thought we should have a tradition," he said, offering her one. Lily accepted the cookie with a grin. "You know, I never did tell you something about that day." "What's that?" "I was actually really hungry," she admitted. "I had told you I wasn't, but I was. I just thought you needed the cookie more than I did." Robert paused with his cookie halfway to his mouth. "You lied to me?" "It was a good lie," Lily said defensively. "Mom calls them kindness lies, when you say something that isn't totally true because you want to help someone feel better." Robert laughed, shaking his head. 5 years later, and you're still teaching me things." They ate their cookies in comfortable silence, watching the same squirrels that had entertained them years ago. The park had changed very little, but everything else in their lives had transformed completely. "Robert," Lily said suddenly, "can I ask you something serious?" "Always. Do you ever regret it?" "Losing your first company, I mean. Even though everything worked out?" Robert considered the question carefully. "You know what's funny? Sometimes I think losing that first company was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was so focused on making money that I'd forgotten why I wanted to succeed in the first place." "Why did you want to succeed, originally?" "To help people. To create something that would make the world a little bit better." Robert took another bite of his cookie. "But somewhere along the way I got lost. I started thinking that success meant having the biggest office and the most expensive car. I forgot about the helping people part. And now I remember every day, especially when I get letters from kids like you who are using their scholarships to chase their dreams of helping others." Lily smiled. She'd been accepted to 3 different colleges already, and each acceptance letter had felt like a small miracle. In just a few years, she'd be studying education, working toward her goal of becoming a teacher. "Speaking of helping others," Robert said, "I have some news for you." "Good news or surprising news?" "Both. Your Cookie Kindness Club at school has inspired something bigger." Lily had started the Cookie Kindness Club 2 years ago. It was simple. Students brought extra snacks to share with anyone who seemed to be having a bad day. What started with 5 kids had grown to over 100 participants across 3 different schools. "What do you mean bigger?" Lily asked. "We've had requests from schools in 12 different states who want to start their own cookie kindness programs." And a children's book publisher wants to create a picture book about a little girl who shares her cookie with a stranger. Lily's eyes went wide. A book about our story? About the power of small kindnesses, Robert corrected. The author wants to interview both of us next month. Will people really want to read about that? Lily, do you know how many letters I get every week from people who've heard about what you did? Parents who share the story with their kids. Teachers who use it in their classrooms. Business leaders who've changed how they treat their employees because they were inspired by a 13-year-old girl's example. Lily felt overwhelmed by the idea that her simple gesture had touched so many lives. But here's the really amazing part, Robert continued. Last month I got a letter from a man in Oregon. He was going through a divorce and had lost his job. He was sitting in a park feeling sorry for himself when a little boy offered him half of his sandwich. The man said he'd heard our story and realized that the boy was giving him the same gift you gave me. What happened to him? He started volunteering at a food bank. Then he got a new job helping manage the food bank. Now he's engaged to a wonderful woman he met there. And they're planning to adopt the little boy who shared his sandwich. Lily felt tears prick her eyes. That's incredible. That's the ripple effect of kindness, Robert said. One cookie becomes one scholarship, which becomes dozens of scholarships, which becomes hundreds of people inspired to help others, which becomes thousands of small kindnesses spreading across the country. As they sat together on that bench, Lily realized something amazing. She'd started that day 5 years ago just trying to help one sad person feel a little better. But kindness, it turned out, was like planting seeds. You never knew how big the tree would grow or how many people would find shelter under its branches. Ready for the ceremony? Robert asked, standing and offering her his hand. Ready? Lily said, taking his hand and letting him help her up. As they walked toward his car, Lily looked back once at the bench where it all began. Tomorrow she'd probably be back here with her reading group, helping other kids discover their love of learning. And someday, when she was a real teacher with her own classroom, she'd tell her students about the day a cookie changed 2 lives and reminded the world that the smallest acts of kindness could create the biggest changes. The taste of the cookie lingered sweetly on her tongue, just like the memory of that first meeting would linger in her heart forever.